Yeah, good afternoon to everyone. As Johan has introduced to me, my name is Luis Maria Perez-Serrano. I know it's a quite long name, but I'm from Spain. And in Spain, we all have, or usually quite have long names, but I'm actually based in Munich, working for TÜV and I'm head of remarketing and consulting at TÜV with global responsibility. But today, I mean, of course, I will be representing TÜV because that's my company, but I will be also talking on the Car Remarketing Association Europe, TÜV as a member of the association. We are very much committed with the standards of remarketing in Europe. We defend the interest of remarketeers, and that's why today I will be sharing some information also on behalf of CARA. The presentation I will be talking today is the following one. I mean, I will be touching some points. It's about data, or how we call this, the word for data, but more particular on what we call the in-car data. And I would like to start in order that we all have the same understanding by defining the term. So what is really that we are talking about when we talk about in-car data, because actually we've been talking about data the whole day, but in-car data is a specific set of data. Then I would like to go through what are the different layers that we should about in-car data, and how do they interrelate to each other, what is the legal point of view, what is the technical perspective, what happens. And then I will get to a point. I think it's very important to understand how this in-car data could be eventually affecting our remarketing business itself. I mean, what is the impact of in-car data in remarketing? But finally, I would like to end up with probably the most important part of my presentation, because what I would like to do here today with you is to share one perspective, and that is the standpoint that we have developed among the members of CARA in terms of in-car data. And this is the standpoint that I would like to explain and share with you today. So, yeah, going to the term, is it really a war, or this war for data? I mean, I wanted to use this picture, this fake picture of Star Wars to a little bit take out the drama. I mean, of course, there is no war ongoing. And between always different interests. Interest come into play, of course, is some kind of struggle trying to find out what is the best consensus and the best middle way, so that everyone will get something out of that. From the CARA perspective, from the TÜV perspective, of course, we want to get the best interest for the remarketing industry, but also we like to think that we are also taking into account the best interest of the society and of the consumers. And I think that we have collected that in our point of view as well, as you will see. Yeah, this picture about the iceberg, I mean, I have to say it's a super because it helps us how this iceberg is somehow unveiling information. So on data, I mean, but the more data we have, the more the iceberg is being revealed. Assets and the process, so how the water level is going down, and we get. But in-car data, we should be also understanding why this is becoming more and more important today. And the reason is that, I mean, this collusion between connected, electric, shared, and autonomous vehicles, I mean, they are generating a huge amount of telemetric data as never before. And in topics like, for example, geolocation and routes, driving data in terms of, okay, what are the using times of the vehicle, what are the idle times, is a car being used Monday to Friday, maybe only on the mornings, maybe only in the weekends. We'll be getting as well loads of road and traffic data, I mean, quality of road, traffic congestions, speeds. A very important point, I think, and very valuable from the remarketing perspective, is we will be also getting lots of vehicle technical data. Think about real consumption and emission, but not theoretical, not from the paper, but of what is really happening in the car at that moment. Travel codes appearing, wear and tear, as our colleague Wolfgang has explained today. And all these could be defined as in-car data independently, or in a database, but they are in-car data anyway. Okay, so by nature, let's say. But that a long list of potential, and what we have done at Cara, together with Cara and with the Cara, has been to identify a long list of potential data sets that could be relevant for our industry. What I'm putting here is not something I will, of course, not explain. I mean, you see the list is already overwhelming, but I decided to put a cutout of the list that has been generated. This list contains more than 90 data elements, and probably there are not all of them that could be there, so probably there are some missing anyway, but it shows how comprehensive the long list of data sets could be in terms of in-car data. By the way, if you are interested, you can go to the Cara website and download the paper with the standpoint, and in that paper is this data set complete, and you can also look at it. But a part of identifying the data sets, what we have also done is that we have classified this data also from the point of view of remarketing. And the most important classification, as I will go through a little bit later, is if this data is relevant for remarketing. I mean, is the data help at all in the remarketing process, or it may be useless? And I mean, not every data will be bringing value to the customer in the remarketing process. Going, as announced before, into the different layers. When we talk about data, I'm sure that maybe because we live in Europe and we are legislated, we always think a lot about it. And the data perspective, as we can see today, is that there is not such a legislation yet about in-car data, so there is not such a legislation developed, but there are certain legislation frameworks that we can look at if we want to look at this topic. Because we also think about GDPR, I mean, the personal data that has been generated, treat that in a secure way, but we could be looking also at property. I mean, am I generating this amount of data the owner of the data, or do I have any rights for it, or intellectual property plays a role there as well? Competition laws. I mean, if we think about who should have access to that kind of data, we are definitely talking also about competition, because I mean, if we limit too much the access to it, competition will be limited. If we open it to all, maybe which is probably not an issue, but this is something that we have of legislation. Then the technical perspective, that we could think about what is the best solution for us to hold in-car data. We tend to think that technical solutions are not positioning themselves as such, but that is something that we can probably question. There are three main alternatives that they are being at the stake today. Are the extended vehicle concept that not by chance is defended by the OEMs, because at the end it's part of the same car that they are manufacturing. We talk also about the shared data server that is mainly defended by the overall suppliers in the market. But we are also talking about opening vehicle platform, where probably the driver or the owner of the vehicle could grant full access to whoever he wants. So, I mean, and of course, there are different technologies or potential technical solutions, and they play a role also in this discussion. And they play a role and interact also with the political layer. In this political layer is, of course, where we have to deal with topics that who should have access to which data and under which conditions. And from that political perspective is especially where Cara is developing their standpoint, or our standpoint, to say, okay, I mean, how this should be treated in a way that it will favor the remarketing industry and will not put additional obstacles, and also end up also favoring the society. Okay. we understand that when we talk about Inca data, again, there will be loads of no value for the industry. But if we look, I think that we will all share the concept that the value of an asset is totally directly influenced by how you have on it. And that's why I said, or I put this slide about the iceberg, that the iceberg was going to be unveiled, is revealing more and more. I mean, the more data we have, the higher transparency we have in the certain asset that we are remarketing, and therefore that support and optimize the process itself. I mean, that will bring us further in terms of industry. But it's very much important that, as I said before, in this potential long list of data sets that we could be granted access in the future too. I mean, we have to, in order to make a good use of them, we have to differentiate, to classify them between data elements that should be a must for our industry, that we should have access value to the remarketing process. We should also have access that are nice to have, and then we could discuss if access should be granted or not, and data that will no value at all, and therefore there's no point to discuss if access should be granted or not, or under which condition. And to give a quick example of what we will be talking about on these categories, I mean, let's think it could be a must. A must could be definitely to know if the vehicle has undertaken already the PTI, the periodical technical inspection, regulated by law. When did it happen, and when is the next one due? I mean, this is a must. I mean, we should not remarket a car without making sure that it's complying with the legislation. Data that I mean, can we know during the life? I mean, while the car is being driven, can we know if maintenance as it should be? In which kind of workshop or supplier has been done? And with the next one due as well. But probably nice to have in this context would be, okay, maybe could I have access to that? I mean, that will not bring direct value process, but will enrich it and will give again higher transparency in the remarketing process. So that would be maybe a nice to have. What brings absolutely no value and what we should not even think about. I mean, I will give a stupid example, but I mean, what is the value of knowing what kind of radio is the driver tuning, for example, radio station? I mean, that's okay, of course, that will bring, maybe the radio players or radio stations will be willing to pay for that, but that is not what we're talking today about. I mean, we're talking about how to optimize remarketing, the remarketing process and business. But I was talking before at the very beginning that when talking about the interest of the marketing industry, we like to think also that we are also contemplating of serving the interest of our society as such. I mean, we are an industry, we are committed with our society, we want to bring value to that, we take that very seriously within TÜV because of our mission of protecting consumers of the risk of technology. So for us, this is a very important and fair point. And I would just like to share 2 or 3 quick examples on what we mean. I mean, having access to this particular Inca data, I mean, that could help us to, for example, as I say, the first line, we could achieve an enhanced fleet planning. We could probably improve the forecast of the need for maintenance, repair, or replacement. Or we could be also using it to optimize residual value management of us in the digital. The benefit for our society as such. The benefit is, of course, to consumers and enterprises. I mean, we are offering a benefit, but also environmental benefits that they will be derived out of that. Okay. Or if we look, maybe I will jump directly into point 3 to not take too long in the presentation. I mean, what about enhancing offering of Inca services with higher competition? I mean, I said before, I mean, competition needs to be fostered, and the access to this kind of data will limit or will boost competition one way or the other. So, of course, by setting the right legislation on this topic and the right user rights, we could be fostering a competitive benefit for the user, for the society at the end, for the consumer, where OEM, owners, and third parties can offer services at the same time. Or looking at the very last one, I mean, what about CO2 emission taxation? I mean, based on the real behavior, I would have super if my driver or aggressive. I mean, the emissions will be increasing and vice versa. Of course, again, we are talking about environmental benefits. So again, it's benefits for the remarketing industry. It's also talking about benefits for our society as well. So last slide. So I would like just to summarize what I have basically already explained during my presentation and give the hints, the 4 hints on what is the standpoint on in-car data from the Car Remarketing Association Europe. First, available in-car data volume and content will be exploding. I mean, again, together in direct connection with the increase of electric, connected, shared, and automotive vehicles shared in the market. So this is coming together. I mean, this is happening. But unfortunately, or maybe not unfortunately, because sometimes we don't need so many laws, but legal definition of data ownership is not yet solved. I mean, this is something that will have to be solved in the next 8 years. Cara has identified an open list, access that open list of elements. It's there for you, it's completely open. I mean, we're an association, a non-profit association, so it's part of our job to put those things available for the industry. So this list has been identified and has been also classified in terms of its importance with regard to remarketing. A distinction in data categories to ensure freedom and maintenance are for now. Why? In order to increase the value and enhance the we are looking for. And last, CARA defends that, or CARA members will defend that the need to assure that their members are granted full access to data which has value for the remarketing services and therefore, again, for consumers. And yeah, this is basically what I wanted to share with all of you today. I know that topic is a little bit hard when talking about data as such, but I think that it's very much important that we all take this is from the remarketing perspective to let go in the right direction, or we think that could be to our business and to our society.
Thanks a lot to bring indeed a topic which doesn't seem to be that straightforward, but I think it's critical because in-car data is indeed, it will become very important data, and as ownership is not yet 100% clear, that's going to be a challenge maybe in the future. Just maybe before we start the panel discussion, I don't know if this was discussed in the CARA group. There was a question from Uras where he says, okay, there's also data available in the after a market through OBD or canvas readers and everything. Has this been discussed, or what would be your view on this? Because that's a bit sometimes on the border of being legal or not from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of the whole context that we have to look at. I mean, and the whole lack of transparency in terms of legislation. I mean, the topic is really complex. I mean, there will be data that will be generated during the life cycle of the vehicle. There will be data that will be generated at the transaction itself, remarketing, and there will be data that is also being generated in the after sales. And the interaction between that, I mean, it's still unclear, and it's still unclear the legislation around it. So,
okay, great.
and we have also been driven in the car